Hello students, welcome to the channel. In today's video, we'll do a punctuation drill that would work for SAT writing and ACT English sections. So let's begin. Question 1. Oil producing countries agreed to unleash millions of barrels of bottled up crude over the next 2 years, committing to restore all the cuts they made at the start of the pandemic as many economies pick up and crude demand recovers. So here we are speaking about how oil-producing countries had stopped production, had bottled up crude production during the pandemic. But now that the pandemic is on the wane, these countries have started producing crude again as economies around the world recover. Now, I need to determine what punctuation to use here between years and committing, right? And the way the sentence is written, there is a semicolon here. Now, if I break the sentence into two parts, one before the semicolon and one after, then I notice that this part before the semicolon is an independent sentence, right? Because it says oil producing countries agreed to unleash millions of barrels. So there is a subject and there is a predicate. So there is a complete sentence. But the part after the semicolon, this is not independent. This is not a complete sentence. Committing to restore all the cuts, right? That does not have a subject. So I can't use a semicolon because a semicolon can only be placed between independent sentences. So A is out. A comma at this place would make sense, right? When I have the first part as an independent sentence and the second part dependent on that, I can separate them with a comma. So this is fine. Okay, when is a colon used? A colon is used when the first part creates expectation for the second part in terms of a list or an explanation or some detail, right? So for example, I'm going to the market to buy a number of things, colon, fruits, vegetables, and cake. So that is when a colon is used, when the first part creates expectation for a detail that comes later. And that is not happening here. So a colon doesn't make sense here. And option D is wrong because I definitely need a break at this point, right? I need to show that I've finished with the first part, the independent sentence, and then I'm saying committing to restore. So a punctuation is needed. So D is wrong. The right answer, therefore, is option B. Question 2. Chevy Silverado owner Franko Dokaj stopped by his dealership recently expecting to buy new floor mats. Instead, he walked away with a killer deal. The store offered to buy his 1-year-old truck for $3,000 more than he originally paid for it last spring. So here I'm speaking of someone who went to his car dealership because he wanted to buy new floor mats for his vehicle. Instead, when he went there, he found a killer deal. And that deal was that the store offered to buy his 1-year-old truck for $3,000 more than he had originally paid for it, right? So instead of depreciating, this asset of his actually appreciated in value. Now, if you look at the punctuation here, I have a semicolon here. And technically a semicolon can work here, right? Because if I say instead he walked away with the killer deal, that is an independent sentence. And the store offered to buy his 1-year-old truck, that is also an independent sentence. So both independent sentences can be joined with a semicolon. But a better punctuation would be a colon, because when I say he walked away with a killer deal, I want to know what that killer deal was. The sentence sets up expectation for a killer deal, and indeed, the part after the punctuation tells me that the killer deal was that he got $3,000 more for his old truck. So this is the kind of sentence in which a colon makes the most sense because it explains what the first part of the sentence does by providing details in the second part. The other thing that you need to remember about a colon is that it should always come at the end of a complete sentence. And you can see that this part is a complete sentence. It's an independent clause. So C is fine. Okay, so we already know that C is better than A. So A is out. Okay, I can't have a comma between two independent sentences. This leads to an error called a comma splice. So B is wrong. And again, I can't technically say D because just as option A, there are two independent clauses that I can join with a semicolon or a full stop. But the best option is C with the colon. So even D is out. Question 3. The US economy's 2021 growth surge likely peaked in the spring, but a strong expansion is expected to continue into next year. Okay, so I'm saying here that the 2021 growth in the US economy peaked in the spring, so it already peaked, but you can see a strong expansion happening into the next year. So the peak has happened, but you would still see strong, robust growth. So here I see that this is the first independent sentence. And this is another independent sentence. And I'm joining these two independent sentences with the coordinating conjunction, which is but. Now, the rule about joining two independent sentences with a coordinating conjunction is that you should have a comma with the coordinating conjunction. Which are the coordinating conjunctions that you can use? You can use these conjunctions that you can remember with the acronym fanboys. F is for, and, not, but, or, yet, and so. So any of these coordinating conjunctions can be used to join two independent sentences, but you need to have a comma before the conjunction. That's how you can join two independent sentences with a comma plus a fanboys. So here, the best answer would be option D because it places a comma before the coordinating conjunction, right? So A, as we discussed, is not correct. Okay, a colon here doesn't make sense because, as I said, the second part here is in contrast to the first part, right? It is not explaining the first part, and a colon is used to provide explanation or detail. So here, a colon doesn't make sense. And I can't use a semicolon if the part after the semicolon is beginning with a conjunction. I could have used a semicolon if I just said the US economy's 2021 growth surge likely peaked in the spring. A strong expansion is expected to continue into next year. Then a semicolon is fine. I can also use a semicolon if instead of the conjunction, I'm using a contrasting connector like however. So if it said the US economy's 2021 growth surge likely peaked in the spring, semicolon, however, a strong expansion. This is also correct because when we use a connector that belongs to the second sentence, and so that makes the second sentence a complete sentence, an independent clause, and I can join the two independent clauses with a semicolon. But if I'm using a coordinating conjunction, I would have to use a comma. So C is also wrong. Question 4. A big driver of inflation, Ms. Lam and other economists say, has been the gigantic fiscal stimulus spending in Western economies, which helped fuel a housing boom. So this sentence presents the cause of inflation. A big driver of inflation has been the fiscal stimulus spending in Western economies. And it quotes Ms. Lam and other economists who have said it. Now, The main sentence here is a big driver of inflation has been the gigantic fiscal stimulus spending in Western economies that helped fuel a housing boom. And the fact that Ms. Lam and other economists have said this is additional information. Because I can take it out of the sentence and my sentence will still stand on its own. It would be grammatically correct. So when I have additional information in a sentence, I can place it between a pair of commas or a pair of dashes. Now here, I need to decide whether I need to put a dash here or a comma here. But my starting punctuation is a comma. It's already given. So I would have to keep my closing punctuation also as a comma. I can't take a dash here. And so the answer is option C. If my starting punctuation had been a dash, then a dash here would work. So a dash is wrong. Okay, option B is definitely wrong because I need to close the additional information with a comma to kind of pair with the comma that started it. And the semicolon is definitely wrong here because the part before and the part after, neither of those is an independent clause. So it doesn't make sense. Question 5. A series of heat waves has battered Western states this summer. It will be dangerously hot, especially for those that are more vulnerable to the heat, said John Wetenkamp, the Science and Operations Officer for the National Weather Service in Billings, Montana. Okay, so here I'm speaking about the heat wave that has battered Western states in the US. And the sentence is quoting the Science and Operations Officer for the National Weather Service, who says it will be dangerously hot, especially for those that are more vulnerable to the heat. Now, if you think about it, the author has selectively used John Wetenkamp's quotation in his own text, right? This is the text of the author. And in his own text, he has selectively used John Wetenkamp's quotation. He is not quoting John Wetenkamp in full. So when that is the case, then I do not start my quotation with a comma. I start my quotation with a comma if it had said, John Wetenkamp said, these conditions will be especially difficult for vulnerable populations. So when I say something like this, where I'm quoting his entire sentence, these conditions will be especially difficult for vulnerable populations, then I put a comma before the quotation. But here, I'm not quoting him in full. I'm using his quotation selectively in my own sentence. And so this position will not have a comma. The way the sentence is written is correct. Okay, a colon can start a quotation, but not in the middle of a sentence. So this is wrong. A comma can start a quotation, but not in the middle of a sentence, as we discussed. And a dash can also start a quotation, but this is normally considered informal usage when you start a quotation with a dash, but definitely not in the middle of a sentence, right? So whenever you want to use a punctuation before a quotation, make sure that the quotation is presented in full. So D is wrong. Question 6. Created by intense heat driving air rapidly upward from a fire, pyrogumulonimbus clouds pull embers, branches, leaves, and particulates aloft in a column that then comes down with a force that intensifies the blaze. So here I'm talking about the heat wave, and what happens during an intense heat wave is that the air from the fire, which is hot, it creates these clouds called pyrogumulonimbus clouds, and these clouds then pull dry matter like embers, leaves, and stuff in a column upward, which then falls down with a force, intensifying the blaze. And that's how these wildfires spread. So here I'm defining what a pyrocumulonimbus cloud is. And this part, therefore, is a modifier. A modifier is something that describes a subject. And the modifier is placed next to the subject it refers to. So when I have a modifier in a sentence that starts the sentence, I need to put a comma between the modifier and the subject. So created by intense heat driving air rapidly upward from a fire, comma, pyrocumulonimbus clouds pull embers, branches, etc. So here D is the right answer. A colon doesn't make sense because a colon can only come at the end of a complete sentence. And this part is not a complete sentence, so A is out. I definitely need a punctuation here because I need to show that the modifier has ended and the main independent clause has started. So B is wrong. And C is wrong because the part before the semicolon is not a complete sentence, it's a modifier. So this is wrong. So the right answer here is option D. Okay, so that was a quick drill of 6 questions on punctuation. Hope this exercise was useful. If it was, hit like and subscribe to the channel. Do let me know what other videos you'd like me to upload. I'll link to the grammar and punctuation drills in the description box, so check those out. I'll see you guys in a new video soon. Take care. Bye-bye.